Hi, my name is Tomasz and you're watching Casual DIY channel. In today's video we'll be covering some basics about a random orbital sanders. Check out the video. In today's video I want to show you what features they may have, how they look, how they work. We're also going to be talking about grit progression, and later on the video I'm going to show you how to use them correctly to get the best finish possible. Both of my sanders are 125mm, which means the foot plate, the round foot plate over here, is exactly 125mm, and that obviously allows to install a sanding disc that's exactly 125mm. However, as you probably guessed it, they are bigger versions of these sanders and slightly smaller ones as well. The two sanders I've got, they work on a hook and loop system, and what that means, the pad, the circle here, is basically like a Velcro, which will allow the pads to stick onto it. So the installation of the pads is very simple and very quick. And that's a very important feature that we'll talk about a little bit later. Let's talk about a few features about these sanders and how to operate them. Usually you're gonna have a palm grip like this Hikoki. In this particular case, this sander at the back of it has got a wheel with some scales with some numbers that indicates how fast the sander will go. So the scales is from 1 to 5. The higher the number, the faster the RPMs on this sander. As you can see, it also has a dust collection bag at the back of it with a port just like so. Easy to put on, and it will help to collect the dust from the sanding. At the front of the machine we've got the on and off button. As mentioned before, the pad over here is 125mm and it does have some holes in it. These holes will help to collect the dust from your sanding, which then lands in your dust bag. And that's more or less it for this Hikoki version. With the Makita, for example, you've got an additional handle at the front so you can grab it here, but also have the ability to hold it both hands like so. In addition, this handle, if you unscrew it, you can place it in any way you want, if you are left-handed or right-handed. That is a very cool and useful feature. If you don't want it or it's in the way, you can remove it totally. It also comes with the wheel to change the RPMs, how quick the sander will go. And in this particular case, you got a trigger to start the sander itself, but also it has got a stop button. If you press that button, the trigger will stay closed, which means it's a constant operation of the tool and you don't have to press any buttons, which is very good, as then it leaves your hands to be free and hold the machine in the way you want. In this particular case, we've got a dust port, and I've got an attachment for my shop vac to go into like so, which helps to gather all the dust from sanding and making the air in your workshop or your house a lot cleaner. The holes in the foot plates of the sanders are more or less fairly standard, which helps when you buy some sanding discs. It's very important to line up the holes of the sanding disc to make sure that the dust collection is the best it can be. The random orbit of the foot plate allows to remove material to sand down the workpiece you've got, leaving as least marks on the wood itself as possible, thanks to the randomness of the orbit of the foot plate. So not only it spins randomly, but also it goes on this elliptic path. Let me show you that now. I hope you managed to see how the foot plate operates and works, and thanks to this it will leave far less marks from sanding than any other sanders out there. Now let's talk about sandpaper and grit progression, as that is as important as the tool itself, or even more. As you can see, I've got several discs here, but let's go back to the grit progression. On the reverse side of the discs you'll have some numbers. For example, over here you got 60, 80, 120. Now what these numbers mean is the lower the number, the more abrasive, the more aggressive the sanding disc will be, and the more material will remove. But also the bigger the scratches from the sandpaper will be. Whereas the higher the number, like for example this 220, will remove far less material and will leave a nice, cleaner and smoother surface. However, the grit progression means that you should be using grit 60, then grit 80, 100, 120, 150, 180 and then 200 or 220. Why is that? Because if you do some sanding with grit, for example 80, it will leave marks on your workpiece, and that's absolutely fine. The next grit up, which for example could be 100 or 120, will remove those marks, but will still leave some marks that are equivalent to a grit 120. With the grit progression, each level removes the scratches from the previous one. So if you went from grit 80 to grit 220, it would have a far harder job to remove the scratches from grit 80. In some cases it would be almost impossible to remove the scratches from grit 80, as the higher grit takes far less material off, and you would end up in a very bad finish and you would have spent hours upon hours on sanding. Hence the grit progression is so important, to have the increments as small as possible, not to jump from example from grit 80 to 180, as that will be too much of a jump and the finish will not be as good as it would be by slowly progressing with the grits. And that's why the ability of swapping your discs in and out easily and quickly is so important. As mentioned earlier, the sanders come with the ability to change the RPM, so how quick they operate, and that's also a very important feature, as many materials you would be sanding in your woodwork adventure will require slower, lower RPMs, otherwise you may destroy your workpiece. So for example, high RPMs, in my case the highest I can go on this Makita is level 5, would be perfect for removing a lot of material from a really rough sawn board. Whereas if I change the setting to level 2, that would be more adequate to, for example, plywood or veneered material, where you have to be careful not to sand through the veneer or the plies of the plywood. Let me show you that on an example. Before you start operating your tool, I would suggest using some hearing protection and a dust mask. Although my sander will be connected to my shop vac, it still generates that fine dust that flies in the air, and you definitely don't want that in your lungs. To have good results with sanding, you need a flat surface to work on, and on top of that, your piece that you're going to be sanding needs to be in a secure position so it won't move on you as you are sanding. So a very good solution to that are these meshes that go underneath carpets so they don't slide on your floor. They're ever so cheap. They're made from some sort of a rubber, but they prevent the movement of your workpiece on your workbench. Very cheap, but great solution. Alright, so this is a veneered chipboard. As you can see, the veneer is probably 1 maybe 1.5 millimeters in thickness, so we have to be careful as we are sanding. But I want to show you what happens if you use too much RPMs, if your sander goes too quick and you put way too much pressure on it. So I'm setting the RPMs to the highest possible level, which is 5 on this Makita. This is grit number 80, and just see what happens with the veneer if you go too quick and too much. So in a matter of few seconds, we actually managed to get through the veneer into the chipboard itself. Let's flip it over, same situation, but this time we'll lower the RPMs to 2. And as you can see, it takes far longer and you've got a lot more control over the workpiece. You can barely see the chipboard right over here, but as I say, you can see how much quicker it will remove the material off your workpiece. And as mentioned before, it's also important when working with plywood, as it will remove the top layer, as you can see here, of your plywood. Usually you've got some really cheap wood inside and a nice veneer at the top and bottom of your plywood sheet, and you have to be careful not to remove it. And one thing I want to mention before you start your sanding adventure is you should be starting the sander on your workpiece rather than in the air. Why is that important? As it's in the air, it has got far higher RPMs than if it was on the wood itself, on the project you want to sand. So the best practice is to actually start your sander on the workpiece itself. Another important thing is how you actually use and operate the sander itself, the technique you're using to operate it. It's important not to stay in one place for too long, but also not to go too quick with your sanding. You just need to find the right balance, as if you do sand in one spot too long, you will create this dip that may not be visible at start, but when you apply the finish, all the unevenness in your project will be very, very visible. Also, do not put too much pressure, too much force on your sander. Let it do its own work. Another important thing is not to tip or lean your sander when you're sanding a board. On some occasions there are spots where we want to add a little bit more pressure or tilt the sander to remove something, but then again we're creating a dip with the sander which may not be visible to start with, but when you apply the finish it will for sure be very visible. So make sure to hold your sander in a nice steady way and flat, which is very, very important to get great finishes. With the random orbital sander, it doesn't matter if you go with the grain that much. Thanks to the way they operate, it's not a crucial thing to go with the grain. Yes, it's best practice, but it's not necessary in this case. I want to share with you also a very simple trick you can use to be certain of that your board, your project will be nice and flat, and you're going to be hitting all those places where you want to sand in an equal way. As sometimes you're going to have those dips, you're going to have those small holes. So basically what you're going to do, a normal pencil, cover your board with a pencil mark like so, nothing special. It will give you the ability to see where you sanded, where you haven't. If there are any dips or hills in your project, you'll be able to sand it evenly. And this is a prime example. I still got a tiny bit of my pencil mark left over here. That means there's a slight dip in this area, although we covered the whole thing. And rather than sanding just this place, what we need to do is to highlight the board again with the pencil mark and bring the whole board, the whole surface to the level of that dip. So you repeat this process until you're happy with the finish. There are no dips. And now the mark is gone, and I'm pretty certain thanks to that I've got a nice sanded board that's flat and even. Now I was just using a normal pencil and to start with. I've got grit 80 sandpaper on the sander itself, so that's absolutely fine. But for example, when you get to grit 200 or 220, I would still suggest using a pencil to make sure that you're covering the whole surface and you're not missing any spots on your project. But with grit 220, it will remove far less material, and using a normal pencil or a carpenter's pencil, it will leave too much graphite on your workpiece, and it will be far harder to remove that mark from a normal pencil by grit 220. And in those cases I move to a thinner graphite pencils like this one. It's a perfect solution to leave a nice mark, but it will not leave as much graphite as a normal pencil. Or just try to use less force when putting the marks on your workpiece. Now, dust collection is very important on all these sanders. It keeps your air around you clean and safe for you to work in, but also it prevents the sandpaper from clogging up, which will reduce the efficiency of the sandpaper and actually may lead to some really bad marks and swirls on your workpiece and damaging your product in the end result. So it's important to have nice dust collection on your sander, as in extreme cases like this one, that's how your sandpaper may end up looking like. And that's what you need to prevent when working with your sanders. But even with dust extraction, you still may get your sandpaper clogged up with the material that you are sanding. So it's important from time to time to check your disc. How is it? What state it's in? If it's starting to peel away, and if it's time to actually change it for a new one. So how can you actually clean a Sandisk? You got special rubbers that you can buy. I'm going to try to leave a link in the description to these for Amazon, and you can get it. As you can see, I've bought this a few years ago and I still got loads left, so they will last a while. But they do a brilliant job of removing all the dirt, all the dust from the Sandisks. Look how much cleaner this is. Obviously, as I said, this is an extreme example, and look at that. It should not be used, okay? I just kept it for you to see what happens if it gets clogs up too much. And as you can see, that's much cleaner than this, and it's a very good thing to use. But make sure not to get to this stage, and obviously don't use a disc that looks like this, ever. Now, this particular video is a series of videos where I talk about some basic tools you can find in a workshop or in a DIYer's shed. And there will be far more videos coming in the future. So, to make sure that you won't miss any of them, subscribe to my channel and press that bell notification icon and change it to all. And also, if you enjoyed today's video, drop me that like button down below. But for today, guys, that's it from me. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Take care.